So kind of like picking up those skills. But before I continue and let our other participants introduce themselves, I want to just remind everybody to keep your phones and your computers on mute when you're not talking, so there isn't any background noise or any feedback. Okay, so if everybody can be on mute, oh, there we go, awesome. Until you're ready to talk, then that will just help out and we won't have any confusion or any background noise. Right, so let's go ahead and we'll start with FYA just to get us, introduce ourselves, and then we'll go around to the other states. Okay, so who would like to go next?
So this is Christina, and I am, if you're calling in by webinar, you can see that my name is Matt Rosen for the day, so I'll respond to either. And I am with Foster Youth in Action, doing research and resource development. And a new skill that I'm learning is I am learning to play bike polo. So it's like playing polo on a horse, but on a bicycle. It's really fun, and you crash a lot, but it's really fun. And I think that's all the FYA staff we have, Jan.
That's all? Okay, yeah. Cool. All right, let's go around to our different states. Who else is on our call today? All right, I'll just call you guys out. California, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know who's on our call. Let us know, again, something that you're learning or an experience that you've recently had.
Okay. I'm Marisol. I'm a current foster youth. I didn't hear the question. What are you learning? Oh, what am I learning? Yeah. And what organization are you with? Oh, I'm with CYC. I'm a member, and I'm frozen. Okay, sorry, I froze, but I'm a member of CYC, and I'm learning, I don't know, a skill or talent. Mosaics. Oh, art. Okay, I'm learning art, and a bunch of things. Oh yeah, cooking. I'm learning how to cook different dishes and stuff like that.
Hi, it's Jenny, CYC. We're rolling through LA back into Orange County. Had a great presentation at USC today, and for Fostering Media Connections, for me, I'm learning to relax. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Learning to cook and learning to relax. Two good things. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to another state. If you guys can introduce yourselves, let us know where you're from, and then again, a new experience that you've had recently or something new that you're learning. Let's go with Nebraska.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Fonseca, and I'm the youth advisor for Project Everlast here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And one thing that I'm learning is how to bake new dishes, just try different recipes.
Nice. Anyone else from Nebraska? All right, let's go ahead and move over to Oregon.
Hi, this is Lisa. Lisa McMahon, and I'm from Oregon Foster Youth Connection. And a new experience is that I took Friday off last week and managed to work half of the day. And so this week I took Thursday and Friday off, and I'm working half of today, and so hopefully tomorrow I will actually have a whole day off. So strategically taking multiple days off so I can have a real day off.
Nice. Anybody else from Oregon on the call?
I don't doubt it.
All righty. And who else do we have on our call today? All right. Looks like that's about it. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so Foster Youth in Action's mission statement is the following. Foster Youth in Action, we empower, we mobilize, and connect a nationwide community of youth leaders and local partners to transform foster care policies and the lives they impact. Our work and yours is a combination of several core values that are stated in our mission statement that include leadership, empowerment, and action. Today, our webinar is on youth leadership, and we'll touch on empowerment, and we'll return to empowerment and action in later webinars and trainings. But what's important to note here is that without both leadership and empowerment, there's no action. So let's start with some definitions to make sure we're all kind of like all on the same page about what we mean when we think leadership and empowerment. Let's take a few minutes to talk about what leadership means to each of us. All right, so let's kind of go around this cyber room that we're sharing today and let us know, what does leadership mean to you? We're going to go backwards with this. Go ahead. We're going to start with Oregon. What does leadership mean to you?
It's actually, for me, it means teaching people who are younger than me to do what it is they want to do. So supporting young people is my definition of my leadership.
So teaching and supporting the youth. Okay. And what about Nebraska?
Leadership to me means being a good role model and showing integrity, not just speaking about it, but also being it, like showing it as an example and being responsible and treating everybody with equality.
All right, so not just talking about it, but being about it too. Awesome. All right, let's go over to California.
Well, to me, leadership is basically being a role model and someone who inspires other people to also be a leader. So it's kind of like a cycle of it. And Jenny?
Yeah, for me, leadership is on multiple levels. It doesn't exist just at the top. It's also leading from behind and leading from the side, and rarely, if ever, effective leading from the top down. So we're definitely coming from a place of grassroots leadership where every young person has a chance, and in our organizational value that every young person coming into CYC is already a leader. They haven't figured it out yet. That's why we're there to help them. So
great. Thank you, guys. And so when we at FYA think of leadership, we really focus on the first part of the word, which is lead. Oftentimes when people think of leadership, they think of being on center stage, but being able to lead others is at the heart of this concept. And that's kind of what some of you guys have already said today. For example, leadership is the process of influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task. Okay? Therefore, leadership development includes individual skill development, relationship building, and passion. So let's watch this little video on leadership.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
All right, so what was the point of that video? Kim, were you able to see it?
No, I'm on the phone.
Okay, did you catch some of the, were you able to catch some of the audio?
Yes, just very little of it. There was something else in the background.
Okay, no worries. Does anybody want to kind of clue Kim in on what we saw in the video and let us know like what the point of it was, how it can relate to leadership?
Hi. I think I really liked that video. I said it was like that's a really good analogy. I never looked at it that way. But about the part where it said leadership, if leadership was that person, the lone nut was like the flint, the first person to like join would be like a spark, and then it starts with that lone nut, but it's nothing without the other people just joining in.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty great example. I've watched that video many times on YouTube. I just at music festivals, you can see time and time again that people do want to participate, but they need to have a reason, and sometimes it's just seeing others. My favorite part of the video was that then it was uncool to just stand there and watch. You had to join in. So that movement building in that sense was a really, really great illustration.
Thank you. Were there any more that wanted to join in and kind of let us know what does leadership mean to you? And the point of this video, how it relates to the point of the video?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is Lisa from Oregon. So one of the things that I'm very excited to see it. I've not seen it before. I've seen this concept, but not with the words and the analogy. And I'm excited to share it with the leaders of the chapters, because I think there's this fear of being the leader and all the responsibility of that. And when you see the power of all of the other people, and it's just you have to get them to join you, and then that's where the power is, I think is, or maybe not the power is the right word, but that's where change is going to happen. And that as the leader, all you need to do is get people to stand up. You don't have to do everything. And this is just a really great visual for that. I think it's something that's hard to communicate to a youth leader, that by taking on the leadership role, you're not taking on all the work.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and keep it moving. So today we talked a little bit about leadership, and which we'll return to, but let's take a minute to discuss empowerment. the other essential piece of our question, of our equation. Again, we here at FYA think about empowerment. We, again, focus on the key part of that word, which is power. Empowerment really is about being given or taking power so that you can be part of a decision-making process. So let's think about, you know, the things that we're involved in our lives and what makes you feel powerful. Who wants to answer that question? What makes you feel powerful? Hey, Kim, what makes you feel powerful?
One thing at my job that makes me feel powerful is having the support of my supervisor and my coworkers. I feel like they're really understanding and I'm able to talk to them with anything like that I have going on, whether it be personal or at work, and they just really open up to me and give me suggestions on where to go from there.
Okay, so having support makes you feel powerful. Great, thanks. Who else wants to tell us what makes you feel powerful?
This is Lisa from Oregon, and I think that since I'm new to legislative change, that's what's in the front of my brain right now is that I suggested that youth be part of an advocacy, or not, that youth be part of an advisory group in connection to some new legislation happening in Oregon for foster parent trainings, and I felt crazy powerful when I saw amendments to legislation that said youth needed to be involved in the advisory board to the programs that are being created, and the fact that those were my words included in that legislation based on this value of youth being involved in that was pretty darn amazing.
Wow, so actually seeing your verbiage produced and being part of something bigger, that's great. I know, I would feel a lot of power from that. Wonderful. The California group, you guys want to let us know what makes you feel powerful?
So for us in CYC, youth voice is kind of paramount to what makes our advocacy powerful. Our members are not paid lobbyists. They're volunteers. They're advocates. I think that what makes CYC's youth voice powerful is very authentic. It comes from the youth members themselves, everything from our legislative and policy process all the way down to the way in which we engage stakeholders and have those conversations. It's not adults. Most of the time, we set it up, we open the doors, but who walks through the doors are the youth members. For me, it sends a powerful message of where our priorities stand or where the state should go. I'm happy to say that California has shifted compared to 10 years ago, where youth voice was minimized, it was tokenized, it was always often manipulated in press, in legislation, where youth were always kind of, even 20 years ago when we first started, there was a lot of stigma. I think the power comes when young people from foster care are now speaking truthfully, authentically, in a way that really promotes their agenda, not other people's agenda. I think that, for me, is what makes that process powerful. How about for you, Maricel?
The question was what makes you feel powerful. Okay,
Uh-huh.
like the first thing that comes to mind is the truth that like our voice actually is heard in CYC. At least it's heard and it does matter. Like last year, I went to go for DAC, my first day at the Capitol. If you guys are familiar, that was my first year speaking to legislators about sibling visitation and the importance of that, and talking about experiences through that. And then later last year, a few months ago, that legislation got passed, and like that feeling, I guess that did make me personally feel powerful, but also all the youth in our organization. I can speak for them too.
Wonderful. So those experiences that you have. Wonderful. Great. So thanks to everybody for sharing. There's a whole strand of research on empowerment of individuals and their communities. But here's a definition from Zimmerman, a researcher who studies empowerment. He states, empowerment theory connects individual well-being with the larger social and political environment and suggests that people need opportunities to become active in community decision-making in order to improve their lives, organizations, and communities. So what does it take to be empowered? What do you guys think? What does it take to be empowered? No? Well, there is the personal power and a sense of agency. Here, agency is defined as the ability to take control of your life or a situation. Also, there's knowledge of political and social structures. If we want to make change, we want the power to do it, we have to know that the political and social structures that were in place and how they operate before we can suggest how to fix them. And we also need a place at the decision-making table. Being empowered is about having a place at the decision-making table. Sometimes we're asked to join, and other times we have to empower ourselves to ask or to demand to be at the table. But you can't have power without a spot in the conversation. Although much of this webinar is about developing leadership skills specifically, it's important to remember that all of our work is tied to a larger social and political cause and is linked to this idea of empowerment. One more step before we get to the how, or how we help build youth leaders. We work every day to ensure meaningful youth engagement, and there is a lot of language that describes different types of youth engagement. Sometimes the language is confusing and sometimes unintentionally inaccurate. So let's unpack what we mean at FYA by these terms. First, there are a number of ways that we don't want to engage young people. For example, tokenization or tokenism. Tokenism is defined as the practice of doing something only to prevent criticism and give the appearance that people are being treated fairly. And that's something that Jenny just brought up. But we also have a number of positive ways to engage youth too, and our young people, like being youth-led or youth-driven and having youth-adult partnerships. And we're not here today to talk about each of these in depth, but we do want to review them just a little bit. Let's start by talking about how they're the same, and then we'll talk about how they're different. We're spending some time on this just because there's different forms of youth engagement and they offer different leadership roles for youth and adults. Before any work on leadership is done, it's important to be able to identify the opportunities you're able to offer young people. It's also important to use the best language to explain the work you do and the opportunities available so that everyone is on the same page. When we talk about youth, adults, community partners, all those involved. So let's start with youth-led. In youth-led organizations, youth hold all of the leadership roles. They determine the vision and direction, and they make all of the decisions. In youth-led organizations, adults primarily are allies, and they value strengths and experiences of the youth in this youth-driven organizations. Also, youth hold specific leadership roles. They determine the vision and direction, make many of the decisions, and adults in youth-driven organizations, they hold leadership roles. They work to implement vision and direction, make decisions related to their leadership roles, value strengths and experiences of youth. And lastly, in youth-adult partnerships, youth and adults share the leadership roles. They determine the vision and the direction together. They have equal decision-making, and they value strengths and experiences of each other. As you reflect on these different definitions, consider which parts of your organization are youth-led, youth-driven, and youth-adult partnerships. It's true, an organization can have multiple ways in which it engages young people. For example, truly youth-led organizations are hard to pull off, as youth are defined as 14 to 24 or 26, depending on your organization. that would mean that all leadership roles are filled by young people under the age of 26, and that includes the staff. But just because an organization perhaps is more youth-driven, that doesn't mean that there can't be projects within it that are youth-led. The same is true for youth-adult partnerships. For example, much of our policy work requires that we partner with adults, legislators, community partners to write the official bill language and to participate in policy committees. For example, on the first Hot Topics webinar, Jennifer Rodriguez, she talked about how in order to create the Foster Youth Bill of Rights, CYC partnered with the Youth Law Center to identify foster youth rights that were already part of California's legislation. So some of our work is inherently youth-adult partnerships. The point here is, after this webinar, take some time to talk with your organization, with adults and youth, about what areas are youth-led, which are youth-driven, and which are youth-adult partnerships, so that everyone is on the same page about their expectations and why different parts of your organization may be structured differently. Later, we will return to a conversation about organizational structure. Okay, but how? If we want young people to lead, we must create the space where youth can have a sense of belonging. And by this we mean have a safe place to be who they are. Having relationships with peers and adults, and value of diversity. We want them to have opportunities to develop mastery over new skills and give them opportunities that would include hands-on and experience learning, opportunities to practice new skills, and growth with mindset versus a fixed mindset. And we want them to have opportunities to increase their independence. And they can do this through decision-making, support to try new skills and experiences, and in a safe environment to ask for support. So what are the skills that young people need to be leaders in their groups, in their communities? Let's get some ideas from everybody. We want to think about some skills that youth need to become leaders. All right, we'll start with California this time. Okay, Marisol, what do you need, or what skills do you need to be a good leader in your group?
Sorry, I had to leave Maris for the Starbucks. She's got an assignment due, but it's Jenny. I could answer that. Sorry, it's been one of those days, you guys. It's like next. We actually define kind of what do we do to really. What would youth need, right? Youth need training, youth need support, youth need to have the safe space, like you said, to make mistakes. I think that there's a lot of learning, more learning done during mistakes than successes. And I think that youth need structure. They need the consistencies of expectations, high expectations, and they need to know the direction in which you're heading. I mean, I think clearly communicating where are we heading with this and why it's important. And of course, youth need to tie it back to their own personal experiences in order for them to really feel invested in the process and to really own it. So for me, those are the places where youth need the most support.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Who else wants to chime in? What are some skills that youth or young people need to be leaders in your groups? Anybody want to add to what Jenny said?
We can't hear you, Lisa.
Well, thanks, Jenny. Oh. Go ahead.
It looks like Lisa was trying to say something, but we can't hear her.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Maybe not. All right. So some of the skills that we kind of came up with, some examples would be interpersonal skills, which include working together and some group decision making, strategic planning, which would include identifying all necessary steps and talking about the pros and the cons of action. And about community organizing, which would include identifying your allies and your opponents, identifying targets, so the people in power who can make the change that we want to see. The action planning and community organizing are later webinars. Right now, we're going to talk about some of the important interpersonal skills development. How can adults and experienced young people help newer members learn these skills? So what do adults need to do or not do to support leadership? And maybe we've experienced it in our organizations or we've seen it elsewhere. So we kind of know some of the good stuff that adults need to do to support youth leadership, or what are some things that shouldn't happen?
I think one thing is,
Go ahead.
okay, I think one thing that we need to do is probably step back and not overtake everything, like overpower them, and let them make the decisions. Like, we can make suggestions, but we shouldn't make the decisions for them, and then just give them more power instead of us always doing everything for them.
This is Lisa, and that's kind of, I was going to say the same thing, is that as an adult, it's hard sometimes to step back and let things be messy. And I think by not providing the solution or the right answer, it gives youth the ability to learn their leadership role. And so I think sitting on my hands and keeping my mouth closed is a skill that I have developed, and I think it's very helpful.
Wonderful, great. Christina?
So a couple things that we have talked about at Foster Youth in Action is the role of the adult allies really being about supporting individual and group development, which includes modeling what the leadership skills that we're trying to teach and to help them develop, and also with explicit instruction. So that could be having conversations about how to develop the skills. It could be workshops, it could be webinars like this. And we also think that it's really about providing both emotional and practical support, right? So leadership development is a really holistic way to help young people develop skills that include the practical skills like public speaking, but also emotional support to help them learn how to navigate complicated situations. So we are going to watch a quick video. This clip is from the TV show The Big Bang Theory. And two of the characters in this scene are roommates. They're having an interesting conversation, and we'll have a little bit of a dialogue about what's happening and if how this makes people feel when it's done.
Play. 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 Play.
What are you doing?
Trying to use a Jedi mind trick to control Stephen Hawking. Play. Play. Ugh. He must be wearing a tinfoil hat or something.
I did a bad thing.
Does it affect me?
No.
Then suffer in silence. Play. 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 Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking.
Penny started taking a class. She wrote a paper. She didn't want me to read it. I went behind her back. I read it anyway.
Stephen Hawking hates me.
I don't know what to do. The paper's terrible. But if I tell her, she'll know that I read it, and she'll get really mad.
I was beating him so bad he doesn't want to be friends anymore. Why does everyone love me except Stephen Hawking?
Is it possible we're having two different conversations?
How would I know? I'm not listening to you.
All right, could everyone hear that? The audio was very low on my side. Could anyone not hear it?
It was a little botched in some
Some
places, but I think we got the gist.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I think my internet connection's a little crazy right now. Just to recap, right? These two characters are having a conversation. One walks in the room, the other's in the middle of doing something, and they're in the middle of doing something, and they're both like very emotionally wrapped up in what they're talking about, and neither is listening to the other. So I'm curious, has anyone ever experienced this before, say in a chapter meeting or in a conversation with another person?
This is Lisa, and I guess I haven't experienced it where it's necessarily been completely two different topics, but I've definitely experienced it where the two people are talking about the same topic, but they're not hearing or listening to the other person, and it appears as though they're not communicating because no one's listening, but they're both talking at each other about the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really common way that this plays out, right? Like people having technically the same conversation, but that they're really not listening to the other person's point of view. And so they're really, you said it perfectly, like talking at each other rather than having a conversation. Anyone else? Okay, so this is clearly not a very effective way to communicate, right? And we know that it often can make people feel like they're not being heard or not valued. So we're going to do a little activity that will help us think about listening. Okay, so the way this activity is going to work is that if your first name starts with a letter beginning at the beginning of the alphabet, so that would be A through L, I'd like you to count the number of times you hear the word the in the paragraph I'm about to read. Okay, so if your first name starts with a letter at the beginning of the alphabet, A through L, count the number of times you hear the word the. Just kidding, we're not going to do through L. I just noticed everyone is like at the beginning of the alphabet. So how about Jenny and Kim, why don't you count the number of times you hear the word the, and Jaya and Lisa, listen to the story as I read it, okay? So it was a big night in the ballroom, and not just because John McClane and G.I. Jane were in the house. Monday's installment of Dancing with the Stars kicked off the first of what the network promised would include lots of action-packed tributes to the show's 10th anniversary. The premiere episode didn't disappoint. There were lots of contemporary tunes in the show, plenty of show-stopping choreography, and even some crazy moments. Okay, so people counting the number of times you heard the, right? So that would be Jenny and Kim. How many times did you hear me say the?
I heard 8.
Okay, Jenny heard 8.
I heard 4.
And Kim heard 4. Okay, great. Jayette and Lisa, how many times did you hear the word the?
Not exactly sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I have no idea. You said the show at least once, so definitely once.
Okay, awesome. So Jenny and Kim, what was I talking about?
The show? I don't know. I was more focused on the word the.
Yeah. Jenny, do you know what I was talking about?
Yeah, you must happen with stars and much moments. That's all I know.
Awesome. Yeah, I was talking about Dancing with the Stars. You are correct. So Jaya and Lisa, can you fill us in a little bit more? Do you know which episode I was talking about or why it was important?
It was a premiere.
It was a premiere.
It was the 10th anniversary.
Yes, it was the 10th anniversary. So the point of this activity is to think about how much information you can actually pick up on when you're thinking about something else, right? And so the last example was, like the last video we watched was an extreme case, right? And Lisa talked about how sometimes people are actually in the same conversation, just not really hearing each other. And so this is a great activity to sort of highlight what happens when we're only paying attention to one thing and what we expect to pay attention to and what we expect people to hear. Does anyone have any feedback on this activity, or what like the experience was like to be asked a question that you didn't know the answer to?
I love being able to make something very abstract concrete. It was pretty awesome.
Great. So the activity itself is a concrete way to sort of talk about listening, right? And paying attention to what other people are saying. Anyone else? Okay. So this is a really neat activity to do if you're talking about different leadership activities in your organizations and chapters, because it is a concrete way to sort of make this, make listening more concrete, even though I just said that. But so it's a great activity to do with youth. It's a great activity to do with adults. I think, Lisa, we're going to return to this again, but you had talked about like it's hard sometimes to put aside, what we as adults know and are bringing to the table, and it's a great way to sort of practice listening to what the members have to say. So here's another video. It explains a few easy strategies for more effective listening and letting young people or other adults or the supporters in your chapters know that you're listening to them and that you hear them. Oops, just kidding.
And finally, an acronym. You can use this in listening in communication. If you're in any one of those roles, and I think that probably is everybody who's listening to this talk. The acronym is RASA, which is the Sanskrit word for juice or essence. And RASA stands for receive, which means pay attention to the person, appreciate, making little noises like, oh, okay. Summarize, the word so is very important in communication. And ask questions afterwards.
Okay, so super short video, 4 really easy tips on how to help people feel like they're being heard. So receiving what they're saying, appreciating what they're saying, right? Summarizing, so paraphrasing what you hear, and asking follow-up questions, right? Does anyone have suggestions on how to show that you're receiving or appreciating what people are saying?
Nodding your head.
Absolutely, nodding your head.
Leaning forward.
Leaning forward, absolutely. Anything else?
Asking questions.
Making eye contact.
Making eye contact, asking questions. Absolutely. So a lot of the things that we do when we're listening have to do with body language, right? So that's kind of something to consider as well. So giving people your full attention and letting them know they have your full attention often includes body language, leaning in, making eye contact, right? Asking questions. So those are just some key tips on how to show that you're actively listening in addition to doing it. So the second step that we're going to talk about today is the role of the coach. So successfully helping young people become leaders is a process, and it occurs over time. So it can take hours or weeks, months, and even years sometimes. And although they may feel small, incremental gains in skills and confidence are huge successes. So for some of us, the hardest part of youth development is trusting the process, that ongoing efforts will make a difference, And that in the meantime, while people are learning these development skills, these leadership skills, no major catastrophes will happen. So what do I mean by catastrophes? Some examples include youth not being prepared to lead a meeting, or stumbling during a speaking engagement, where they may freeze or say something that's incorrect in terms of like their message. And we always want to make sure that young people are comfortable. But as both Lisa and Jenny talked about earlier, that like these experiences are hard to witness, and that it's hard to, like, sometimes you want to jump in and save the young people, but it's also important that these mistakes become really important learning opportunities. So what if we think of our roles as adult allies as a coach? So what does the coach of a sports team do? That is a question for you all. What does a sports coach do?
Encourage.
Awesome. They encourage. What else do they do?
They don't play the
back.
game. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
I was going to say that
So
they don't play the game. So I'm looking at this picture of the soccer ball, and I'm thinking that the coach, when it's game time, the coach is not on the field.
Absolutely, right? So the coach doesn't play the game. They're not on the field. We're going to return to that in a minute. Jayette?
They help prepare their group.
Absolutely, they help prepare the group, right? So these are all the roles of a coach, and we often think about these moments in the moment, right? Like during meetings or during presentations, when we get confused about our roles or about the role of an adult ally. And so we at Foster Youth in Action like to think about the role as more of a coach. So during a game, coaches don't get on the field, as Lisa said. They don't run onto the field and say, hold up, that's not how we practiced it, right? So for the most part, their work is done during practice before the game and by debriefing after the game, which is what Jayat was talking about. And they do a lot of encouragement, right? So as Kim mentioned, like that is a huge part of the role of a coach. So good coaches make sure that their team has the skills that they need to accomplish their goals to the best of their ability prior to taking the field. So most of our work is done before and after. And during the meetings and during the presentations, we can often let young people learn by doing. And it doesn't mean that it's exactly the right fit for the role of a coach, right? Because unlike a sports team, it doesn't mean that we just simply sit back and observe during meetings. As adults in the rooms, we can ask questions to help people better explain what they're saying or what they're thinking. When a facilitator gets stuck, we can certainly offer them help if they would like it. And we can ask prompting questions about thinking about what they had planned to do or what they're getting at. But it's really about most of the work being done before and after the game or after the meeting. So this is another very short video. The same man as before. His name is Julian Treasure, and I think I forgot to mention that earlier. And this is a video where he's really talking about some key skills that we could use here too. So here we go.
That there are 4 really powerful cornerstones, foundations, that we can stand on if we want our speech to be powerful and to make change in the world. Fortunately, these things spell a word. The word is hail, and it has a great definition as well. I'm not talking about the stuff that falls from the sky and hits you on the head. I'm talking about this definition, to greet or acclaim enthusiastically, which is, I think, how our words will be received if we stand on these 4 things. So what do they stand for? See if you can guess. The H, honesty, of course. Being true in what you say, being straight and clear. The A is authenticity, just being yourself. A friend of mine described it as standing in your own truth, which I think is a lovely way to put it. The I is integrity, being your word, actually doing what you say, and being somebody people can trust. And the L is love. I don't mean romantic love, but I do mean wishing people well. For two reasons. First of all, I think absolute honesty may not be what we want. I mean, my goodness, you look ugly this morning. Perhaps that's not necessary. Tempered with love, of course, honesty is a great thing. But also, if you're really wishing somebody well, it's very hard to judge them at the same time. I'm not even sure you can do those two things simultaneously. So, hail.
All right. So he's talking about using this acronym HAIL, which means honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love, as a way to show people that you're listening, and so be able to express to them that you care about them, right? And to have that sort of, I think we can use this as like a characteristics of a good coach. So I'm curious how you all feel about that. How does this resonate for you in terms of youth leadership development? Do honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love resonate?
This is Lisa. So I guess I'm thinking about that trust is really hard in general, and so I think that as we present ourselves with those things, I think it's going to make our role as a coach much easier if we display these things, these behaviors, or if we display this, then it's going to be easier for young people to trust us and able to learn from us as we attempt to be a coach.
Absolutely, right? So trust is hard. And so by portraying honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love as a coach, we can help young people build that trust with us. Absolutely. Anyone else? Okay. So another thing to keep in mind as the role of the coach is that since skill development takes a lot of time and it takes practice and support, there are lots of times when people take steps forward in their skill development and then also take a few steps back. So I'm going to use an example of a person learning to walk as the way to illustrate this. So most children, before learning to walk, they learn to crawl. And after that, they can stand while holding on to other humans or onto a table or a couch, right? But on their own, they're still going to revert back to crawling. Next, they may take their first steps, and they may be able to do that on their own. But that doesn't mean that they're forever going to be walking. There are times when they will revert back to crawling because that's what is easier to do. And it's more efficient until you become an efficient walker. But soon, children are often running and playing, and they don't have to think about every step that they take. But that doesn't mean that they never go back to crawling, right? So like if you've dropped something under the table, you can crawl under the table to get it. So you're using that skill very strategically, even though it is not a skill you use often anymore. And lastly, when we totally master these skills, like winning a race in the Olympics, right? I think we can all agree that's pretty well mastered running. It still doesn't mean that we don't return to all these other stages at different times and with different needs. So for example, if we're thinking about leadership development, right, and we're thinking about public speaking, one way to this analogy might apply is that when people are learning to speak publicly, maybe they start with a very small group, right? Maybe it's actually even just speaking one-on-one and being able to say what you think out loud, right? And then you go to a meeting where you're sitting with someone and you're sitting with an adult who supports you and has your back and is going to help make sure that there's space made for you at the table. And in other situations, you may go back to being really shy, right? But as these skills progress, you'll become more comfortable. So maybe you no longer need to write down all your talking points because you can remember what you're going to say until you get in front of a large group. And all of a sudden you're speaking to 100 people and you need to go back to using your talking points. So it's really just this idea that these skills that, and leadership skills and skill development is as much as it's a forward process, it's also sometimes a few steps back. And it's important to remember that when helping young people to develop these skills, and for ourselves, for forgiveness when we're learning new leaderships ourselves. The other thing to think about is that now that we have a couple ideas and some concrete skills of what how adult allies can help young people, it is really also important to think about the environment in which we are operating with young people, right? So how do we structure our programs so that they can help young people assume increasing levels of leadership? So what do you all think? How can we help structure our programs? And it looks like we lost a few people. So Lisa, Jayat, do you have any
Jenny said she was Jenny said she was in a bad reception area, so she kept trying to get back in, but then she would drop, so her reception was bad.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Lisa's still here.
Hi, Lisa.
I guess one of the things that I was thinking about is that when I have some youth who need how some youth even need more level of support for a simple task, and so having kind of different levels of even things like creating an agenda. So having a really structured, lots of information to be able to hand to somebody about how to do that. But then other people might only need to say two things for them. So having kind of a lot of structure available for youth who need that, and then having kind of this varying level of scaffolding for each skill, depending on, or each thing that needs to be done, depending on how much the youth is going to need in that moment.
Absolutely. So I hear like you saying that meeting individual youth where they are, right, in their skills and having different ways to support them. So maybe it means a few small directions or a few small suggestions, right? Maybe they don't even need that, but some youth may need more handouts or more one-on-one coaching in order to accomplish those skills. So having the variety of ways to support them. Absolutely. Anything else you guys want to add? I think it's also really important when we're thinking about environment is to think about how our programs operate without us, right? So what are the structural things that we have in place to help make sure that there is intention and that there is commitment to providing skill building opportunities, right? And that might be related to chapter structure. So a system where young people mentor each other, a system where there is a trade-off of different tasks so that people can get larger opportunities to practice new things. Earlier we were talking about how it's really easy for a member to feel like if they take on a leadership role, they will be taking it all on, right? So how do we help make it so that these tasks can be shared and that people have opportunities to learn multiple tasks within a chapter meeting or within other leadership opportunities that we have? I know in our last webinar, people were also talking about thinking about sort of advisory board meetings and being able to participate, you know, in organizational activities as they gain more skills and more experience. So another thing that's really important is that we're talking about youth leadership development, right? And so youth leadership development is not just about the organizations that we're in. We don't just want young people to be effective leaders within child welfare, right? And within foster care advocacy, we want them to learn leadership skills and think about how these connect to other areas of their lives. So what are some ways that programs can help connect young people to additional opportunities outside of our organizations, right? What are the ways that we help bridge gaps for them with other interests that they have, or figuring out how to translate these skills to jobs and to other programs and relationships and all of the things that really make us holistic human beings. Because as we know, many of the young people many of them, all of them, will eventually age out of our programs, right? And so we want to make sure that they've had opportunities to experience leadership and empowerment in other areas of their lives as well, so that they can build off of those as they move forward. So I don't know if either of you have anything you want to add about ways that you've done this, or ways that you've seen it be effective. I certainly have some ideas, but I'd love to hear if there's anything that you guys have experienced or that you've seen work really well.
Is it just Jaya and I?
It is. We lost Kim as well.
Okay.
I didn't know we lost Kim.
I think that the one thing that that keeps popping into my head in reference to this, which is not the question you asked, but the value in this and how big that is, because I've seen some people who were so involved in OFYC that when they left, there was a huge void, and that seems unhealthy to me, and that I feel like really being conscious of this is so important, and I'm glad you brought it up, because we have, you know, some leaders right now who, you know, I've been kind of trying to push out of the nest and get involved in other things, so that they can transfer these skills and that they can kind of make a difference in a bigger picture. And so I just love the idea that this is brought up as an important point.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of us see, right? Like, how do we, when youth are aging out of our programs, there's often a sense of loss or like isolation again. And we really want this to be a bridge between our organizations and the larger world, and where they can use these leaderships to thrive in all aspects of their lives. So I think there's a lot of great ways to do it. And I think that being aware of our community partners and even bringing young people to meetings with us obviously helps them build their own connections, and thinking about when we're talking to them, what are the things they're interested in, right? What are the other things we know exist and how to plug them into them and connect them personally to other individuals that we know within and without of the child welfare system that share similar interests. Jaya, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was just thinking about just allowing youth, and I don't know if people do this, but like making sure that the youth are making, when they go and they speak, allowing them to make these connections. Because I know that I know different organizations that are kind of very, they have the reins very tightly on their youth. And so anything that comes up, it must go through the organization first before it goes out to the youth. But allowing those youth to kind of, you know, they speak here and they meet these different people and start building their own connections, because, you know, not only will it open up doors with what they're fighting for as well as like policy change and things like that, but it also can open up doors for their personal lives, such as jobs and other things. So I was just thinking about just, you know, allowing the youth to kind of, you know, take on those leadership opportunities, and kind of, you know, being set free to meet other people, build connections for themselves, for the group, but also personally as well. That's just one idea. I'm like, I got more, but there's one of them.
That's a great one. It actually reminds me very much of someone who I know. Whenever she goes to an event, she says with whoever she's with, like, okay, we can't talk to each other until we've each introduced ourselves to 3 new people, right? So this idea that you're really trying to help promote networking for the organization, of course, but it's also really about these individuals and like letting them connect with whoever they want, and having those relationships not have to be brokered through the organization, I think is a really important component. So yeah. Okay. So if either of you don't have anything else you'd like to add, we're just going to do some final thoughts. So youth leadership development is a process. It is ongoing. It is every day. It is sometimes a long process, but it's really important to celebrate all of the accomplishments and also have a lot of patience and support and empathy for the steps backwards that can happen, because it's the process of learning, right? Every skill takes a while to master, and we often fall back on old habits as we're learning a new skill until we become more comfortable in them. Coaching takes time. As much as like the role of the coach is a great analogy, it also requires a different use of time. So in some ways it's more time, and in other ways it's really investing in the long term, right? So knowing that the preparatory work before a meeting or before speaking engagement is really important, and a lot of us know and invest that time. Also focusing on the debrief as a really important part of the learning process, to be able to reflect on what went well, what they could do differently next time. And it's really about helping the young person identify those things for themselves, and then helping fill in with them sort of what they want to do next and how they're going to learn those skills. And then lastly, going back to helping them translate their leadership skills, right? Like, the world is big. How else can they apply these leadership skills in jobs, in relationships, in school, and things like that, and with other organizations that they're a part of or could be a part of? So we would like to get feedback from everyone. So we have a webinar evaluation. If you could please go to this website, it's tinyurl.com/FYA webinar. And just go and fill out the short questionnaire. It's 4 or 5 questions about the webinar. And we'd also love for you to share it with other people in your states and with other states that are part of our network. It will be on our website. We've been recording it. So it'll be on our website, so you can share it with people who weren't able to join us. And the next 2 months are going to be hot topics. We were supposed to alternate, but May is not going to be a good month for this nuts and bolts webinar. So we're going to do 2 months of hot topics and then return to nuts and bolts. So Matt had sent out an email asking for feedback on what's the most important thing to talk about in the next couple months. The website is also very similar. It's tinyurl.com/FYA hot issue. And there are several options to choose from based on the current landscape of issues in child welfare right now. So extending foster care to 21 in states where it does not exist, affordable housing for former foster youth, jobs and job training for current and former foster youth, group homes and congregate care, supports for foster youth who are pregnant and parenting, psychotropic medication, and succeeding in college or other higher education opportunities. So if people could go onto this website, again, tinyurl.com, FYA hot issue, and vote for the top 3 things that you'd be interested in talking about over the next few months, that would be great. And we're going to close with holding on to the vision and trusting the process of youth leadership development, even if sometimes it's a little scary or hard or takes more time than we feel like we have. And knowing that the importance of helping young people develop these skills is really beneficial to them as individuals, to our organizations, and to the child welfare systems that we're trying to change in our state and in our country. So we'd like to close with just a question about what's one thing you think you'll take away from the webinar and apply to your work.
I love this quote, and the whole idea of trusting the process is something that I say a lot to other adults, and I'm getting some of them on board, which is great. And I think that that this was just kind of refreshing and reminding me of kind of the things that are happening, and I liked again all of these abstract concepts being put into concrete ways, and I think that I am really excited to use this webinar with other adult supports, because you've clearly explained things that are complicated to explain, and they're important values, and yeah, I'm just excited to be able to share this with other adults.
Great. I'm glad that it was useful. Jet, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, not really, but I did thinking about what you said as far as you need to talk to 3 other people before we can, rejoin. I'm like, I really like that idea. So, just, putting that out there, encouraging you to kind of step out of their comfort zone. I really like that. I think that's something I'm going to take away and then use. Yeah.
I think when I first heard that from someone else, I was like, that is great, because I know I need that too. So it's hard to talk to strangers, right?
All right.
Just takes practice.
Jaya, will you say what you said again? I had to walk to plug in my phone, so I missed it.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying what Christina brought up about you need to talk to 3 other people before
yes,
the 2 people can rejoin. I really like that. And it's like a great tool to get, people out of their comfort zone a little bit and kind of, push them out there a little bit. Not in anything that would be, very overwhelming, but something very simple. And I think that's a good thing to use.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't mean that we send them it's not like, okay, go talk to people, right? Like, so much of this could still be integrating the role of the coach into that, right? So it could be like, okay, let's talk about how you're going to introduce yourself, so that you're still helping to scaffold that learning, because it is scary, and sometimes we need that little extra cushion when getting out of our comfort zone, like you're talking about, Jayet. So anyway, thank you all very much. We've recorded webinar, and it'll be on our website. I think Matt will probably send out an announcement with the link soon. So thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this a second time.
Yeah, so glad you could.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye.